I guess I should explain what it does when this doesn't have any rod clearance. So you can see now, has a lot of rod clearance, about 50 to 60 I'd say right there, but that's plenty. So what happens is if this does not have enough clearance, the rod or the piston will hit the rod and it'll actually put it sideways. Okay, so think of it like this. The pin is hitting up here on one side while the piston's in the bore. The piston pushes the pin over this way and it makes the whole thing go up and down like this. So it destroys the bearing, usually scuffs the crap out of the piston. Primarily it destroys the bearing if it's too far over. Even if it's just slightly over, it usually will wear one edge of the bearing. It'll wear this side and this side, so like opposite sides like that. So it'd wear this side and the bottom side. So that's just a little FYI there. We're gonna start putting this thing together and I'll show you this. I've had M2 helping me out here so we can get this thing done. So I've already put the rollarized thrust on this. So the rollarized thrust bolts on right in the front of the block, and this is a Torrington bearing that's behind this cage. And what it does is it keeps the crankshaft from going forward. So I set my thrust with this because the only thing I care about is the crankshaft going forward. Going backward, it hits the stock thrust bearing, which there's no load on. Coming forward, it is being pushed by the converter and transmission charge pressure. Little FYI there. So we're gonna put the pistons and rods in. You can see we didn't even re-hone these things. It's not critical at all. This is the only one that's honed. Don't overthink stuff. So we're gonna put all the pistons around this thing. What we're checking here is we're checking thrust. So since it's aluminum block, you can't put the indicator on it. So I put it on the back of the crankshaft. And so it's 0. Go back to 0, please. Okay, so Mitchell is, put it right there, pushing the crankshaft backwards. That's at 0. Okay. Now push the crankshaft forward. And it's at 7. Yep, 6, 7 right there. Now when you're doing this too, I can hear a real defined, see if you can hear the clunk. It's very light. There you go. And then a clunk to the front. That one's even lighter. There, I think you can hear it there. Very, very faintly, you might not be able to hear that. But what I'm listening to there is I'm actually listening to how it's like very easily tunk, tunk, tunk. I mean, only 6,000, so it's not a lot of movement. So it's tunk, tunk. That's just telling me that things are free. I can hear that it's hitting up here for the primary thrust going forward. And then I can hear it back here when it's hitting going backwards. like on this side of the thrust bearing. So it's exactly what I want it to be. Thrust clearance is exactly what I want it. So we are good. So we now have a assembled short that's only taken about 2 hours longer than I thought, because we had to do, you know, connecting rod modifications, which is, it's all normal. It's all part of the deal. We're gonna start working on camshaft and get the rest of this thing all together. All right, we're back. We're gonna be installing camshaft today. These are a 65 millimeter tool steel camshaft in these engines, in all my SMX stuff. Very cool. The little tricky to a degree with gear drives, because they do not line up, they ain't dot the dots, nothing like that. So you actually have to install the camshaft on the opening ramp to rough it in, and then we go back through and check it, and then can turn and index the top gear. It is a complicated process. I'm not gonna bore you to death with showing you the whole thing, because it usually even takes me 45 minutes or so. Half hour, 45 minutes. So, but we'll go through the fast forward of it, and if you really want to see how to degree a camshaft, I do have a free video, a video right there on my playlist on how to degree camshafts. Right in the playlist on Steve Tech. Something else you'll notice is we have the oil passage lines crossovers. So what this is doing is, I want to make sure, because I do all oiling to the top half of the motor through the push rod. Keeps things alive on these drag and drive vents. These are basically balance tubes, so I'm equalizing and making sure that I have equal pressure and equal volume front to rear and left to right on the oil passages. I'm gonna put the camera down now, and we'll just video the rest of this as we're starting to put this camshaft all together, and then up to the next stuff. Actually, so since this has already been together and I've already had it in with this camshaft, same crankshaft, everything's the same there, I have it degreed already, so all I need to do is find the proper tooth to get it to line up. So like I said, there's no dots, none of this other bull crap. So usually if it's a brand new deal, then you end up having to take all these little bolts out and you keep on indexing it over. But here, I'm just gonna have to find the proper tooth. So I'll just go through it, it's gonna make it quicker. So I wanted to change the degree of the camshaft some, so from where I had it before, give it just a tick more on the bottom. And so I'm advancing it, and you can see by what I was doing there was degreeing it, moved it, degreed it, moved it, degreed it, moved it, and now I have moved the crankshaft is in where it needs to be. I moved the camshaft where it needs to be the correct spot, and now you can see that the hole is just a little offset. See that little hole's offset? So what you have to do is I'm trying to pull the gear off without turning the camshaft to move the gear to it indexes over and lines the hole up, so it keeps the camshaft in that spot. There we go. Now I'm back down to, I put another 2 degrees of advance in it, but you can see how long it takes to jerk around and figure out exactly where it wants to be. It's all these little offset holes, offset versus the tooth count. It's a complicated thing. I don't even understand it, to tell you the truth. So anyways, but I know it's right. Now I'll put all these bolts in, torque it up, and we'll start putting the front cover on. Now, the one thing that you will see too is that so the rear bearing, the rear camshaft bearing is that roller bearing. It keeps the camshaft from going backwards. There's a Torrington bearing set up, a little small Torrington bearing set up here on the front hub that keeps the camshaft from going forward. So that's what sets the thrust. So you'll see me do that too. Well, that totally sucks. You just saw that I just pulled the fuel pump drive off, which is that sets the thrust there on the front, and I had the fuel pump drive shaft in it. Pulled the freaking camshaft out, so now I got to redo the whole thing. All right, we're all set. When I pulled it out and put it back in, I just had to obviously find the right tooth. There's 2 teeth off, so pulled it out, put it back in, pulled it out, put it back in. So now we're back to where we need to be. I need to just add a little bit of shim to my thrust right there. It's got about 20 thousandths of camshaft thrust, and I want to have about 10. So I'm going to add 1 shim onto it, and then put the front cover back, or the front fuel drive pump on it again. Got a little ahead of myself there. I can't put that whole drive mandrel on because I won't have any way of turning the motor over to finish putting the engine together. But I do have the top dead center verified. That is part of the fuel pump drive, and actually I still end up having to take the fuel pump drive off too in order to separate it to get the cam sync in. But we'll do that after everything's all the valve train, everything's all on it. Then I can determine where the cam sync needs to be a little bit easier. You'll really like this. While I'm putting the short block together, and the heads are all done and no damage there. We already talked about that. This is the intake manifold. So we just took the top off. This is the intake manifold. You have a blowed up piston, and it sends oil everywhere. And ring. Those are all pieces of ring. Crazy. Absolutely crazy what goes on inside the intake manifold when parts start getting into the combustion chamber. Always remember, there's a whole bunch of overlap. There's a bunch of stuff that's going on that moves stuff side to side. Yes, it moves stuff side to side. If it breaks here and is in the combustion chamber, it is very likely to come out and come over here, anywhere in here. Those are piston rings out of that piston. Very cool. Now we'll start, got all the head studs in, got them all set. Clean up the deck surfaces, and we'll put it in on the head gaskets. Notice no water, or as I like to call it, water. No water anywhere around, because I don't transfer any water through the head gasket to the cylinder head. So if it ever did blow a head gasket, which is very unlikely in this combination, but anything's possible. Especially if you miss tune-up and you torch it. But if you ever did happen, it's not going to blow water all over the place, not going to transfer any water like that. Also, very, very unlikely it ever pressurizes your coolant system and destroys your $1,000 radiator. Very good deal. We'll start putting on the cylinder heads like we showed earlier. No problem with the cylinder heads. We went through, bumped all of them. It's always amazing to me that it had like one or two that just had a real light nick, but actually we ended up lapping all the valves in. I know some people love it when I say lapping, but because it is the correct way of doing it. So we lapped them in, and the valve seats were perfect. Didn't have anything that ran through it, even though the intake manifold over here, whoop, it's gone, has all that ring material in it. Totally amazing. And we found a piece of ring material over on the other side on one piston too. Was something else. So we're gonna put these heads together, or put the heads on, and keep on trucking. Now, you'll notice I did not do a retorque on these, and I'm also not heating them because I put the same head gaskets back on. They're perfect. They're already torqued, retorqued, heat cycled, so it's better to use head gasket again, and since it's perfect, and then not have any retorque issues. So it's just like doing another hot retorque or cold retorque. Now we got all the rocker arms on it, and I wanted you to notice, so we put push rods in, lifters in. Those are our own lifters. I mean, we don't make them, have them made for us. Manton push rods. Manton made all these rocker arms and these stands for us. So big, burly, one-piece rocker arm stand. Our own proprietary steel endurance rocker arms. Endurance and super duper strong, bearingless rocker arms. And each rocker arm is the same. Especially designed this because I don't want to have a left and right intake, all the same exhaust, 2 different intakes, 1 different intake. That's all bullcrap. I want everything to be exactly the same, so any rocker arm is interchangeable. So you can see all that. You know, use the peanut butter lube on the critical head studs and rocker arm stand studs. Regular oil on the rocker arm shaft bolts. So we have all the valve train in. We now have the intake manifold is all back, almost all back together. It's all cleaned out, all the crap's out of it. So we're gonna put this thing on, and I got 1 injector that's hung shut, and so we're gonna fix that thing and get this intake manifold on, put the covers on it. Then I will have to, we'll roll it all over. Before I put the covers on it, we'll set up the cam sync and get that thing all in there before we go any farther, or before it's all done. Then we'll just put on miscellaneous accessory stuff in the front, and this thing is ready to put back in the wagon. Oh, also you might have noticed I changed engine stands in the middle of it. I got these new engine stands, and so far they're pretty darn cool. Very well built, super strong, and you can just turn it over and it's tight. It's not like my other ones. So see, like, I told him you gotta put a handle on it, but it's super tight, and it's just turning with just this little wrench. It's a real live gear case with bronze bushings, all that other kind of crap. So nice. And then when you get it in place, like my other ones have so much backlash in them, this one's got maybe like a half-inch backlash, but the other ones have like 2 inches. And here we have it. So, intake manifold's on, injection's on, wiring's in it, just set the valve covers on. So we got everything plugged in. Gonna make my new jumper lines, because these are the street drive injectors down here. These are the race injectors up here. So we are going to start putting her in the wagon, and we'll go over some stuff there. We got twin 98mm turbos, electronic Turbo Smart wastegates from Turbo Smart America. This is my fuel inlet right here from a fuel cell. Fuel filter, regulators up on top of the fuel cell. You see the cooling right there, because we run, it has 4 inlets, 4 outlets. So here's a shared inlet. The other inlet I think is off right now, and that does all the cooling. So keep in mind here, water in, water in, water out, water out. So, and each side is separate from the other side, so nothing crosses over, no water goes in between the cylinder head. So it's water in it right there, water out right there, water out right there, and then water in at the front corner of the block down there. All super cool street drive stuff. We're gonna start working on plugging this bad boy in.